podcast because I'm not doing the fucking combining of two different things. There's another part of this podcast. It doesn't matter. It's gone to the ether. It belongs to the other now. Psych 3. It's going to be a movie. It's going to feature Sean and Gus doing Sean and Gus things, and I'm dope. Like, yes, down. So the second one was really good. I like the second one a lot. I like the first one. Don't get me wrong. Like the first one, especially with the gangster dude who like shows up at the end. Like he's like, yeah, like everything you did came true, and it was all because like Buzz was helping out in the background. Like that was fucking great. I love that, and I love that it was like the or not the penultimate, but the true conclusion of the Yin Yang saga because it was the protege of Yin, played by Mina Suvari. So like that was cool. I dug that. Love that. Sequel comes around. Yes.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't saying anything. I was just saying yeah to you. That's all.
You said Psych.
No, I was about to. The only thing I was thinking of was I was asking. I remember Zachary Levi being in the first movie.
Yes, he was a red herring as a villain. He was supposed to be the main villain of the movie, but it ended up being Mina Suvari. So like that was cool. Then of course they get married at the end, and then the start of the sequel has Carlton Laster in a bed having suffered a stroke from a gunshot wound. That was to mirror the real life stroke that Timothy O. Munsters had in between the end of the show and the start of the first film. That's why he only had a small cameo in the first film, because he was still recovering from the stroke. And he even, I think it was like a Larry King interview he did. He even said like he thought about retiring from acting because he's like, how can I do what I used to do now? And like he had to, you have to. Like, there are different levels of strokes. I worked with a man who had a stroke and was fine for the most part. His face drooped a bit, and his speech was slurred, but like nothing else was affected. And I also know people who have gone paralyzed on an entire side of their body. So like. It ranges, and you can come back from it over time with work, but it's not always a guarantee. But Munsters is he's doing a lot of work to come back. There's a Rachel Miner, I think her name is. She's Supernatural fans will remember her. I think her name is Rachel Miner. She ended up developing cerebral palsy about a decade ago, and she thought about retiring, but she ended up continuing to act, and she actually appeared as a recurring character throughout Supernatural the first few seasons, and then came back for their final season in 3 episodes, and they worked around her disability. So it's cool to see actors who are overcoming obstacles like that, especially like when they're people I highly enjoy watching. So Here Comes Lassie. I think was that the name of it? Here Comes Lassie, or Lassie's Home.
Lassie comes home or something. I think.
Lassie Come Home, I think is what it is. Like it's great. I loved it. It centers her. It's kind of like a Rear Window kind of story where Laster's doing all this work from his hospital bed. We get Sarah Chalk as a nurse, which is hilarious because she used to play a doctor in Scrubs. That was great. And the plot of it was really solid because they're trying to figure out like what's going on in this, this bunk ass rehabilitation center, and we get Strode acting like a Cuban doctor. That was great.
Kind of like that. That was awesome.
Oh, that was fantastic. And the addiction to, or not the addiction, but the psychotropics in the ice chips the flavored ice chips that they're eating throughout the episode.
That's great. Remember that shit, man.
That's great. It's just a damn good film. I forget who else was in it. Because I know there was like another name that was in it. We also got to see them in San Francisco some more, so that was cool. The one thing I will say, Gus in the hideaway.
God.
just roll, and there he is. Like that was great. The one thing I would say is, I kind of was hoping that either the second film or now the third film would have addressed this, but I really wanted to know what happened in Nicaragua with John Cena's character.
Oh man, I
remember that at the end of the first one, John Cena shows up and goes, "Hey, you guys got married, mazel!" And he's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm in town here to see my sister. And oh, by the by, is there a back entrance here?" And then people tried to shoot him, and he's like, "Guys, gotta run!" Like that was great. And there was a throwaway line in the sequel where they're like, we don't, you heard Ewan, which is the name of John Cena's character, Ewan O'Hara. He's like, you heard Ewan. We don't talk about what happened in Egypt or whatever it was. It's like, that's great. I love it.
Oh man, I would have loved to see that too. I would have loved to see that play out.
Maybe have like Sean have like some PTSD of the events in Congo or wherever the fuck they went in the third film, because it's gonna feature Gus trying to get a divorce for his fiance so he can get married to her before their baby arrives. So this is gonna be a lot closer to the end of the second film time-wise than the first was the second, and the end of the series was the first. 'Cause I think there was like 4 years between the show's finale and the first film, even in the show's universe, because they were talking about how long it's been that they were engaged throughout the first movie. So,
Damn.
Here's hoping. I'm excited for it. I don't even care if no one else is. I don't care if I'm the only person, still watching. Like, I'll watch every movie they put out. Like, I'm still begging for what are we on? Season 8? I'm still begging for a 9th season. No, they did a 9th season.
9th season? No, their last one was 8.
Okay, so I'm still begging for a 9th season. Just bring it back.
How many more movies do you think they could do with this possibly?
I don't think there's a limit. There used to be a time on television when a show would end, and they would keep pumping out made-for-TV movies. The Munsters have like 6 of them, if not more. And like a lot of them still feature the original cast members for as long as they could. There's a show on Hallmark Channel called The Good Witch, which I was watching for a little while. They had 5 or 6, 7 movies leading into the series. So you could do quite a bit of, filming with these characters and whatnot, especially if you're doing it in 90-minute interludes, or it's easier to do a 90-minute film than it is to write, 12, 14 episodes for a season. Costs are cheaper. You also get to promote it on a release day, and that's always a big deal, like with films. So yeah, I think they could honestly do as many as they want. Like, there's so many. Like, you don't even need it to be that different with like the murder mystery. Just always have something fun and exciting to attach yourself to. Like, fucking Murder, She Wrote was on for like 10 goddamn years.
That's the beauty of something like this too, is that the show never really had the biggest budget or anything. So doing it in a limited amount of time actually benefits it quite a bit.
I think they had about as big of a budget as most early 2000 porn flicks. And we got $7,000 for an episode. So the one thing that I would love to see, fourth film rolls around, and it's a monster murder mystery, like Dracula and Werewolf and the Frankenstein monster and all the Mummy, like that. I would love. Like, it could be like tongue in cheek. Like they could go to like a haunted house kind of thing, and find out that the guy who plays Jekyll and Hyde was murdered, and now they have to find out which monster did it. Like, that'd be great. Oh, that'd be
God,
great.
that sounds amazing already.
Or even better. So like that'd be great if you can't do anything else. But since NBC Universal, I do believe, owns the Universal Monster Flicks, you could do that. But if you can get your hands on it, have Sean and Gus on the set of a revival film of the Munsters.
Oh man!
Like, how great would that be?
That'd be fantastic.
But
man.
then you'd have to cast the right characters, and it's a difficult task, but I think it's worth doing. By the by, the revival of the Munsters that they tried to do in like 2009, oh, it's so good. It's different, yes, but it's good. Mostly, I just like fell in love with the girl who played. Was Lily the mom or the niece? I think Lily was the mom.
Oh God, I want to say mom.
The niece, the blonde chick, the chick that played her in the Munsters remake. Oh my God. Oh.
I never even knew that. I never even knew there was like a modern remake. Like I knew they did a series of movies, but I never knew there was like some modern remake or anything.
I want to say it was 2011. 2012. So it's technically called Mockingbird Lane.
Okay.
Eddie Izzard played Grandpa. Jerry O'Connell played Herman Munster. Portia de Rossi played Lily. Mason Cook played Eddie. And Charity Wakefield played Marilyn. That's who it is, Marilyn Munster. And I was quite a fan of Marilyn Munster in that show. She's she purty. Let's see if we can.
My parents were always big fans of the original series and like the Addams Family as well. Like that was always the things I remember them watching. So I wonder if they've ever actually seen the revival at all.
I don't know if they would have liked it because it very much was a darker take on it, but it still had the elements that I think would appeal to people because it was still about family.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. Jerry O'Connell is less like Frankenstein, 30s Frankenstein movie monster, and more how he was described in Mary Shelley's book, where he's like a hodgepodge of parts. And his heart, which is the only original part he has left, is starting to go. So they need to find someone who like kind of fits his emotional spectrum, because in this show, the heart is where your soul is, I guess. They didn't really go into detail.
All right.
But like they're like, we have to find you a new heart, and Herman's like, no, it's the only original part I have, and it beats for Lily and Eddie. But they end up finding out that this camp counselor also cares about Eddie and develops an affection for the wife. So Grandpa's like, oh, good, we'll just kill him and take his heart, so that way you can still feel the same way. And everyone's like, no, that's wrong, Grandpa. So Grandpa tries to kill him, and Marilyn's like, Grandpa, we said no killing. And eventually the camp counselor ends up accidentally breaking his neck, and Grandpa's like, oh, happy coincidence. So they end up taking his neck.
Anyways,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So they end up taking his heart and giving it to Herman. And it's great. It really is it's fantastic. But I'm sure a lot of like classic fans of the series will be like, "Oh no, it's very different," and it is very different, but it's also very good.
Well,
See,
like
I wouldn't want to see someone try to do a Herman Munster impersonation from the original, because like that was so classic and iconic. The big oaf, big lovable, like almost cowardly lion oaf. Like no, there's only one of those, and you can't do that again. Like if you're gonna do a remake, you need to make it different. Otherwise, just put the old stuff back on, which I'd still watch.
Yeah, I remember. See that I don't know if they would be totally against that idea of like a darker take, because I remember them used to watch Lost in Space, like the original series of that, and how like cheesy and over the top that was, and they ended up watching the Netflix version, which is a much more like serious tone to it from what they were telling me. And they were fine with that, so I don't know. Maybe the darker take might not be so bad.
Maybe were they fine with the movie?
That was the Matt LeBlanc one, right?
Yup.
The 1990s movie. Yeah, I'm not totally sure on that one. I mean, I think they've seen it, but they didn't. I don't remember them having such a fond memory of that. So.
Well, Mockingbird Lane is only 39 minutes long. It aired as a Halloween special. It did get 5 million views, so like, it wasn't terrible.
Cool.
The problem is this version could never be made again because Brian Fuller was a part of it, and Brian Fuller's persona non grata these days. No, I'm sorry, not Brian Fuller. I'm right, but I'm wrong. Fuck, who was it? Maybe I was right. Hang on. Nope. That's not who I'm thinking of. I thought Bryan Singer was a part of this. Oh, he is. Oh, Bryan Singer directed it. Never mind. Bryan Singer, not Brian Fuller. Bryan Singer's persona non grata anymore. So, wrong Bryan. Singer's the problem, not Fuller. So maybe it could still be made because Fuller developed it. So yeah, let's see. The cast was Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi, Charity Wakefield, Mason Cook, and Eddie Izzard. Cheyenne Jackson, he was in it. Beth Grant was in it. Guy Perry and John Kesser. I would check it out if you can find it. It's become very hard to find, but I still think it's Still think it's worth checking
Worth to
out.
watch.
Yeah. I mean, they were making made-for-TV movies about the Munsters for 30 years. They did Munsters Go Home in 1966, and then they had Munsters Scary Little Christmas, I think is the title of it, in 1996. I think they only stopped doing it because the original guy died.
Because I've seen the guy who played Herman Munster in other movies before. There's at least one of that I know of that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And that was Yep, that's what I remember. Yep.
I'm sorry, these two Utes. What, Mr. What the fuck was his name in that movie? What is a Ute?
Oh God. My favorite thing of that whole movie is when he's getting the woman to talk about how she can't see from a certain distance or something.
Now,
That's my
Mrs.
favorite
Whatever, and only Mrs. Whatever, how many fingers am I holding up? 4. Sweetheart, I think it's
Try
time.
again, dear.
Sweetheart, I think it's time for a thicker prescription.
I love how he's just holding the fucking tape measure all the way the other side of the room too. Oh man,
So good.
it's funny.
So good. I'm trying to find who the original Herman was. Ironically enough, the guy who took over for it is named Edward Herman. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Fred Gwynn, that's who it is. Fred Gwynn.
Okay.
Yeah, he did it up until his death in 1993, and then Edward Herman took over for a few movies. Let's see how many he did. Munsters Go Home, that's 1. Let's see, that was in 1966. They didn't do any until... Oh, okay, hang on. That was just the theatrical movies. Munsters Go Home was the only one that was released in theater. Let's see. The Munsters Revenge was the first one that I see in 1981. That's 2. I guess he was only in 2. I thought he was in more. So I guess the rest were by Edward Herman. But I think there's at least 5. So, all right, let's move on. You watch movies.
Okay.
You watched one of the best movies.
Of course.
Train to Busan. What'd you think of Train to Busan?
Oh man, I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I was very emotional movie. And what I think what I love the most about this movie is that you're always feeling tension, no matter what, you're always feeling tension. The movie, and the way it handles all of these different subplots going on at once, I appreciate too. Like you actually feel connected to every character. Nobody's excluded. Granted, they can't do the stories for too long, but still good in that way. I have that moment like how I have in most movies like this when I'm like, please don't kill that guy. If you kill that guy, I'm gonna be sad. But he's gonna die anyway.
They had that moment like 7 times.
It was the one who had the pregnant wife or something like. Well, for me, it was primarily the guy who had the pregnant wife. And he's doing it. He keeps calling the main character an asshole through like the whole movie, but then sacrifices himself at one point, and you're like, damn it. This dude was like a badass 90% of the time, and now you're killing him off. Fuck you.
Well, let's be clear. He didn't just sacrifice himself. He got bit, and then decided to sacrifice himself.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Correct. Yes, that is true.
Yeah, he wasn't just like, yes, you're an asshole, and I'm not, so I will kill myself so that you can live. No. He's like, I'm fucked. I think he even says like, I'm fucked anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and the way they dealt with them too, like how they weren't just zombies or just these zombie creatures coming after them all the time. You're just constantly running. How they actually made it stop at times, and the zombies had different reactions to things. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I love the play on sound. That was a cool idea. Taking like they would react like light and darkness and sound, like how you take the phone, you would slide it across the hall, and they would all run that way when it rang.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's sick, man. That's dope. I love that. And then they all climb into the overhead compartments and try to crawl up that way. I'm like, see, this is clever stuff you guys are thinking of, man. You're actually being smart in a situation like this. Whereas I know, and I'm gonna put this as a mark against movies, American movies that do it. Every time I see an American zombie movie, the first thing they do is they just keep running and running and running, and they don't assess the situation at times. And they did very much here, and I loved it for that. But now, man, this movie was just. I tend to not always go for movies with subtitles either, like foreign movies. But as soon as I started watching this, I could not stop. I was in
You know,
such a
there's a
level of
dub,
tension.
right?
The only version where I watched it, it didn't have that version.
Well,
Like I
fuck
could have probably
Hulu.
looked for it somewhere else. I think it was on. It was also on Amazon Prime too, I believe.
It was
So I
also on
could have probably
Tubi.
watched the dub
Free.
version there. Yeah, there too. Yeah.
Like Tubi's
Yeah.
not some backwater, app. Like they got some
No,
good content.
I know it's not. I searched for it, and the first option that came up was Hulu. It's not like I just preferenced that. It was just I went for it there. Um,
And that was your first mistake.
the other thing too is I've seen the last zombie movie I saw that was like this in any way was World War Z, and I couldn't stand that movie. I felt like that movie just bottomed out at the end, whereas this one, like, there was these constant oh shit moments. Like
I
when they're
liked
trying to
World War
escape
Z.
on the train. You did?
Mm-hmm. I actually like the ending. That last third act, which wasn't the original third act. Did you know that?
I did not actually.
They had shot the movie and it didn't test well, so they reshot the ending. And I actually really liked the ending that they went with. Like I thought it was it was very tense, mostly because they had this hot Israeli chick in there who he has to cut the arm off of, and then she's like, "Yeah, I don't have an arm, but like I'm still a badass bitch, and I'm gonna help you." And then like all the other dudes, like I think there's like two dudes at the end who are like, "Oh well, if the one armed chick is gonna do this, like if we don't do this, we're gonna be real big pussies." It's like the four of them go and try to get the viruses, and he injects himself. And like, is it gonna work? And we don't know. And then all of a sudden, like the zombies are like, "Ah, no, you're fucking tainted. Ew, gross, Brad Pitt looking motherfucker." They run around him like, "Ah, so cool. I love this ending. It's so different." But apparently, I'm in the minority, and I know that. Like, I know I'm in the minority on this. Not a lot of people liked the ending of the film. I did. I thought it was cool. I was like, this is good. And then he stops in for the product placement. Oh, that was great. Like because he stops at the Pepsi machine or Coke machine or whatever, and like he's got like the label pointed at the cameras. He's drinking on the way out. Like, oh, we know who paid for this reshoots.
Almost makes me think of the Sonic Olive Garden connection. You know what I mean? Like they just blatantly threw it in there too.
Yeah. So the film was great. I love Train to Busan. The relationship between the father and the daughter was definitely the driving point, I think. And like the daughter was the best part of the film because she's just like all cute and like I don't want my daddy to be a jerk, but like everything else is like, oh, okay, no, that's cool. Dude gets mauled outside the train.
She's so genuine too. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like offering her seat to the pregnant lady, so or was it the pregnant or the older lady? I forgot.
I think it was the older lady.
But either way, like offering her seat, and it was just like, oh, dude, that's so sweet. Most kids wouldn't even do that nowadays. That's cool.
And then the father chastises her like, no, you have to get yours. And then the bodyguard guy goes like, oh, he's such a douche. And his wife's like, you can't say that in front of the little girl. And he goes, what? She knows. And the little girl says something to the effect like, that's what everyone says about him. And I'm like, oh, Peanut, no.
Self-aware ain't a bad thing, though, man. At least it's something.
Well, you shouldn't have to know that your parents a trash bag, especially when you're only like 9. Like that's not something you need to worry about at that point.
but I will say this movie breaks my heart. Like
Dude.
it seriously does. Like,
So the dad dying was bad, but I thought we were like I thought we were in this fucking Night of the Living Dead nonsense, as the mom and this mom to be and the little girl are walking through the tunnels, and then everyone's like, we don't know if they're infected, shoot them, and then like the guy's like sizing up I think it was the little girl he was sizing up, or maybe it was the mom, and then you just hear Until We Meet Again, that Hawaiian song they always sing. And they're like, no, we got live ones, and then they start running to go save them. And I'm not bawling or crying, profusely or like dry heaving or anything like that. I'm a man.
No, but you dropped a man tier, at least one man tier.
No, everything I said I wasn't doing, I was doing. I was dry heaving. I was bawling. I was like, don't kill the girl. She's supposed to die. Then they save her. I'm like,
not only is she singing it, she's crying as she's singing it.
Because it was the song she was going to...
Makes it even worse.
Yes, it was the song she was going to sing for her father when her father couldn't make the recital the night before. Oh, his dude. And then like that was like just the biggest dick movie. He's like, I'm sorry I missed your recital. I bought you a Wii U. And she's like, I already got one.
And then she like looks at another one. I'm like, oh man. Oh.
But the best part would have been if he got her a Wii U and she's like, thanks for the Wii U. These are fun. And throws it with her like Atari and her like Virtual Boy. That would have been great.
You know the fucking cruel irony of that is if she threw it a certain distance, it would stop working anyway.
Probably. So there's a sequel and an animated series, or not an animated series. I think it's an animated movie. The second film is called Peninsula. I haven't seen it yet. And I haven't watched the animated movie yet. The animated movie is a prequel to how everything started, and Peninsula is a direct sequel. Okay. So, but it doesn't have any continuing characters.
Are those both on like Tubi too, or no?
I don't know. You'll have to look. Okay. But they have different names. I think the animated series is something like Train to Busan : The Beginning. I don't know what the beginning. I don't know what it is called. The sequel though is called Peninsula. It's not called. I don't think it's called Train to Busan Peninsula. I think it's just called Peninsula, which makes sense because it's a Korean film and Korea is a peninsula.
I got the connection.
I think they were going a little bit more minor. I think it's a specific smaller peninsula within the peninsula, but still. So yeah, Train to Busan's great. You also saw
fantastic.
Hitman's Bodyguard.
The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard.
Something like that.
Man.
With Selma Hayek.
Yeah, oh my God. Like, right off the gate, the cast in this movie is fantastic to me. I mean, you got Ryan Reynolds, you got Samuel L. Jackson, you got Selma Hayek, you got Antonio Banderas, and Morgan Freeman. Like, this movie was already set up to me to be something fun, at least, you know. The premise of it's relatively simple. It's just coming off of the first movie. Ryan Reynolds took a shot for Samuel L. Jackson, and now that kind of thing is haunting him. He's no longer a bodyguard anymore, and he wants to go on sabbatical or whatever. He doesn't want to be violent again, so he finally goes on a trip. And as he's going on the trip, which I always love slow motion shots, and this is another great one. As he's about to sit down at a resort, as soon as he sits down, you see gunfire going off in the background, people falling, everything's fucking blowing up everywhere. Selma Hayek grabs him and goes, "Let's fucking go!" And he's like, "No, I'm on sabbatical. What the fuck are you doing?" And now she's taking him to rescue Samuel L. Jackson because he's been captured by this group of terrorists or something like that. And then the whole movie kind of just plays off of that, and he's basically saying, like, I didn't want him to save me. I said anybody but him, but they're stuck together now anyways. And now they have to stop some plot about the electrical or the economic grid or power grid or something of Europe being taken down. It's such a stupid, nonsensical plot. But the driving force is the comedy and the action, you know? And it totally sells me. I'm going to tell you right now, Selma Hayek everybody loves Samuel L. Jackson and Ryan Reynolds, but Salma Hayek sells her role so hard in this movie. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they play off of the idea of she gets pissed off every time somebody calls her old and ugly. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and she literally loses her shit. Like I'm not talking like just yells at them. She'll fucking shoot them, rip them heads off, throw them off a bridge, whatever it is. She'll fucking do it. She's not afraid to. And there's a moment where she's trying to have a calm conversation with Ryan Reynolds, and oh god, what is it? She's trying to tell him this story because he has a traumatic moment from his past where he loses his mother and after seeing something, and she tries to tell him this tragic story, but like it's so gruesome and violent that he's like, this is not helping. This is not helping at all. But she just keeps telling it and telling it. He's like, okay, yeah. When I wake up from my second nightmare, we'll have this talk again. Good talk. But it's so fun and stupid, and I love when movies go so far left. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna embrace it, and embrace it. You know, don't act like you're something better than what you are. And eventually, you find out that Morgan Freeman is Ryan Reynolds' stepfather in this movie, and there's a slight twist on that where he becomes part. He's actually the bodyguard for the bad guys or something like that. And what he tells Ryan Reynolds, and I don't know about you, but I've always like Morgan Freeman like a father figure. He's always that comforting voice in movies and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he's sitting there and putting down Ryan Reynolds, telling him, "You're a disgrace. You disgrace my family name. I don't even want to look at you. You're the you're the dumbest person I've ever fucking seen." I'm like starting to hunch over, like, "Fuck, dude! If Morgan Freeman said that to me, I'd start crying too." Shit.
So Morgan
Um,
Freeman's the bodyguard of the bad guys.
yes, he is.
He's
Yes,
84.
you find, yeah, they actually do have a slight fight scene too, where I'm like, "How the fuck are you pulling this off, dude? How's that possible?"
Body double.
'Cause- Yeah, yeah, I would assume so. Yeah. Um, but no, it was. It's never going to be known for anything special. But if you're looking for just a high energy, laugh out loud, it feels very much like those really like over the top buddy cop movies of the '90s. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much fun in that regard. And if you're just looking for a mindless, fun action comedy, watch this. It's well worth the time.
So that takes us to E3. You said you had some comments
Mhm.
about this year's E3. I don't even know what came out this year, so I'm not. I don't give a fuck. But you might. So
I gotta level with you. E3 was it was more so than ever for me. Was a big disappointment this year. Um, Not much. It felt like a scramble, you know. Like they had like you were like we were talking before. You said like it felt like they had like maybe less than an hour or two worth of time and just went, oh shit, put things together and let's go. You know.
hmm
And a lot of these I've watched, I only have small highlights from them, and that's primarily the reason why is because a lot of what's in here just doesn't appeal to me, and I'm not going to waste a shit ton of time over it. So
hmm
I picked a few random things that got my attention. Like what was it that dude? What's his name? Jeff Keighley. He tried to do an event last year called Summer Game Fest, and he did another one this year to kind of predate E3 and showed off some games in there. And I'm like, for the most part, nothing appealed to me except for two games that stuck out. The first one is going to be The Evil Dead is getting a game, and it's going to be kind of like almost like the Friday the 13th game was that came out recently,
yes,
and
I
maybe a
did
little
see
bit
that.
Dead by Daylight, kind of
hmm
like seems like a mixture between those two concepts, and I'm not against it. You know what I mean? I'm not against the idea of that. If it's just some stupid little fun thing you can have with your friends and it's over the top and it could be fun for a little bit. I had some fun with Friday the 13th, as broken as it was, at least at launch. It was still fun, so I have no problems with that. The other one that really got my interest, and we've reviewed a game in the series on the show before, was Metal Slug. Um, Metal Slug's getting a new game, but it's going in a different direction. It's taking a tactics approach to it, which I'm interested in. Final Fantasy Tactics in a way, and as far as I know right now, it's only coming to PC. But I hope at the very least it gets like a Switch port because after playing Final Fantasy Tactics, I'm interested in any game that's like that, strategy wise. So totally down for that. But that was all from that show. Then Ubisoft came along, and 90% of their show, I was like, fuck it, I don't care. The only one that stood out to me was the new Mario and Rabbids game called Sparks of Hope, sequel to the Kingdom Battle game, the XCOM type of shooter thing, which I had a lot of fun with. And this one looks promising as well. And they're changing some things where you're not totally battling on a grid. You're kind of more like in a free open area type deal. And I'm definitely excited for that. Um, let's see. The one I always look forward to every year, just because they embrace how bad E3 is and they make fun of it, is Devolver Digital. They have a lot of indie titles in their presentation. One that piqued my interest probably the most was called Trek to Yomi. It it had the same like kind of art style and design as Ghost of Tsushima did, but presented it in a side-scrolling hack and slash type of way, which I'm highly intrigued by that. Let's see. Otherwise, let's see. There was another one that was kind of like this arena first-person platforming thing. Almost felt like a competition-based game called Phantom Abyss. That looked pretty interesting, but I was more not the games so much weren't the biggest deal to me. It's just how much they made fun of all the problems with the industry, like selling all these extra passes for fees and stuff like that, and how it gets you extra games and stuff like that. I thought it was funny. Um, and then everybody was praising Microsoft's E3 presentation. Where I'm like, dude, 90% of these games I don't give a shit about. This is an hour and a half presentation. I cared about 10 minutes of it. Okay. And the only two ones that really stuck out to me were Psychonauts. That comes out finally getting a release date of August 25th. Game looks solid. I'm entirely excited for it. I might pop in my old copy of the original and maybe play through it again.
Is it a remake?
And so Psychonauts 2, no, Psychonauts 2 is a full-blown sequel.
Okay.
So yeah. It was Kickstart. I think it was either Kickstarter, Indiegogo, something like that. And got all of its funding or whatever. And I know they're bringing back Jack Black for it to do a musical number in it. So I'm definitely excited for that too. I want to see where he goes with that. Um, let's see what else I got. They showed some footage for the multiplayer in Halo Infinite, and I'm like, it looks good enough, but I want to see more from the campaign. That's what I'm in this for. And still no definitive concrete release date on that. And yeah, that was about it for Microsoft. That was about the only things in that whole presentation. I sat through and watched that crap. It was the only thing that intrigued me. And then Square Enix came along, and about 90% of theirs, again, just garbage. The only one that stuck out, and I'm not even the biggest fan of it, but anything that's a single player experience, I want to at least give an honest shot. And they, Eidos Montreal is making Guardians of the Galaxy game. And supposedly this is not supposed to be a live service game. This is supposed to be a just a single player adventure game or something like that. And I'm like, I'm into the idea or whatever, but then I looked at the character designs and wow, Star-Lord looks rough. Like whatever they did to his hair is I'm not feeling it. And the jokes, even though the jokes in the movie were cringy enough, I mean this one's even cringier to me. And the combat looks well enough, but I might at least, since I got GameFly, I might drop it on the queue there and maybe play it, give it an honest shot. But the biggest one that brought it for me was Nintendo. Like they actually seemed like they had a presentation. Maybe they had it planned months in advance or something, then to just drop it either as an E3 thing or for whatever. Because everybody one of the bigger things people are talking about was where's Metroid Prime 4. That was big. That thing's been flip floppy in development. But they do have a new Metroid game to show off, and it was called Metroid Dread, and it's a sequel to Zero Mission from the Game Boy Advance, and it's kind of got this black and white color aesthetic to it, and I dig the idea of constantly being followed by an enemy while trying to navigate through your environment. Like they're playing on the idea of the name, and I like that. And that's gonna come out in October. Um, I do need to catch up on Metroids though, because the only one I ever played through and completely finished is Super Metroid. Let's see. Other than that, see, Advance Wars is getting a remake too. Another strategy game getting a remake on this time on the Switch. And never playing the original, I might give this new one a shot because I'm sure hunting down the originals is going to be expensive as fuck. Um, then there's a little talk about the Zelda anniversary. Got some new footage for Breath of the Wild, the sequel to it anyway, and it looks all right. I gotta be honest, the game I like the most from Zelda on the Switch so far has been Link's Awakening, but that's just because my style for Zelda games are different. And the other two I would say that stuck out were there's a new Mario Party game coming out, which is going to feature some of the game mastered like boards from some of the original versions, and sequel. I haven't seen Wario get a new game in a while. There's going to be a new WarioWare game for Switch, and it's called Get It Together, and I'm excited for that because it's another game you can play with the family on the couch, and I've been a fan of that series for a while, so I'm gonna definitely check that out. But it seemed like Nintendo overall had maybe it's just because of my preferences, but they had the overall best presentation to me. And to me, honestly, that was my E3. And yeah, I kind of wish they just didn't do it. Like I kind of wish it was just like last year, and they would have just dropped announcements whenever, because it felt like they just weren't ready, you know.
So, what have you been watching on YouTube?
YouTube. Let's take a dive in. All right. I would say probably the biggest one that stuck out to me was Stop Skeletons from Fighting when he did his Engage coverage, both the like overview of it and then talking about the ports on that system, and him constantly doing the joke about how it looks like a Choco Taco was funny. Um, and how some of these games, God, it was like the first mobile like device or something like that, and some of the features of it baffled me, like even trying to get it switch out your cartridges, which is fucking ridiculous. You would think most systems would have the spring-loaded thing in it, right? This one you have to actually pull off the back port and take the game out, like where and this thing it was by the battery too, which was even stranger. And then you have to insert it and put the battery pack back on. And even then, like the games he said were any good were all ports of games that already existed, like on PlayStation. Like the best they could give was ports of PlayStation games, and that's sad, man. And eventually they did improve on it, but it was a too little, too late situation. And then the best they could do was have like a cell phone app kind of be the spiritual successor to it, and then over time they just kind of disintegrated on its own. And I did like hearing about the history of it, and does it make me want to go near it? No, but still an interesting take. Let's see. Scott DeWaz did a video on at least my favorite false advertising in games, but my favorite one this past week was digital only physical games. And this is this growing trend of just putting a code inside of a box and calling it physical. And I found that to be completely pointless, and I actually had experienced the same situation where I had pre-ordered. It was Wolfenstein Youngblood, and when I pre-ordered it initially, I thought you were just going to get the game. They didn't tell me nobody told me anything about it at the outset. I didn't find out until about a week before it came out that it was only going to be a digital code inside of a box, and that game sucked anyway, so yeah, it's irrelevant. But I understand where he's coming from on the premise of why waste space with this and make it put up a facade when there's just nothing to go on. Let's see. Other than that, SNES Drunk had a couple cool videos highlighting the Super Scope and a couple of games from that, Battle Clash and Metal Combat. And I never personally played with the Super Scope, so I don't have any personal experience with it. But from what I could tell, it doesn't seem like he was enjoying some of it, but not for the most part. It wasn't very good. A Man of the Jedi covered. But those were very funny videos as always. And let's see. Other than that, let's see. I think my biggest highlight was hearing. I do listen to some music, gaming related. So I listen to guitar covers from this channel called The Game Civilization, and of the Return of the Joker main theme for the NES, and it's amazing. I always listen to his stuff, and I wish he would get more subscribers. He only has about 1,000 right now. I really hope he gets more. But aside from that, I think that's about it.
The only thing I can add is I found a new channel that I'm about to subscribe to called Dead Meat. They do a thing called Kill Counts, where they look at movies, traditionally horror films. Well, they did do that one movie that you talked about with Logan Marshall Green, Upgrade. And basically, it's a recap of the movie, but they focus mostly on, how characters die and how many die per film. And I watched one just because it was about a movie that I was interested in. I was like, all right, let's just see. And then I watched like a dozen or so scattered out through movies that I wanted to see or didn't want to see, but kind of wanted to know a little bit more of, and movies that I have seen and his takes on those. They're anywhere from 17 to 35, 40 minutes long, depending on the movie and how many people, how many death scenes there are and whatnot. And I thought it would just be like a death counter. But he does a really good job of going through the movie, highlighting the story, talking about what works and what doesn't. So it really is more about of a review, but with an emphasis on deaths. And it's mostly horror related, but it's not specifically horror related. It can at the times be a little bit obnoxious because he always has like a gag that's themed from the movie. And specifically, I really liked those babysitter movies. And he did reviews of both of them, and he's like, it's all too pop culture and too many pop culture references. But then in another video, all he's doing is pop culture references, and I'm like,
Hypocrite much?
A little bit. So it's kind of one of those things where I was like, all right. But he's generally charismatic, and he's really good at highlighting what you need to know about the film review as opposed to what the film actually offers. So I thought it was pretty good, and I'm going to subscribe to it here. I'm going to watch a few more. But yeah, it's pretty good. And he has a podcast that comes out every Friday as well, so I'm going to give that a listen. Oh, and I'm caught up mostly on Rainn Wilson's Dark Air. I listened to that all the way from Iowa and back, mostly because, that and a few episodes of Castle Super Beast, the Super Best Friends podcast, sans Matt. But I was supposed to have satellite radio, paid for it and everything. And I get in the car, and they're like, yeah, the satellite radio's not set up, so you have to do it yourself. I'm like, I'm not setting it up myself. I'm not paying for this bullshit. Fuck that noise. So I ended up listening to a bunch of podcasts because I found out the night before I was leaving for my trip that the satellite radio wasn't going to work. So I downloaded a bunch of podcasts hastily. I downloaded 4 Castle Super Beasts, like the 4 recent ones, and then every episode that was available of Dark Air that I hadn't listened to yet. I had to listen to the first 2 episodes. So I had more than enough content to get me there and back. And the Dark Air stuff was great. Like, it was, it's very fun. And it's called Dark Air, but it's mostly from a book's perspective of the events of this show. Like Rainn Wilson's introducing it like a book, and like each episode's a new chapter, and it's really entertaining. It's weird and goofy and silly, and there's cameos in it. He was in Jurassic Park, the first one. Sam Neill. He did 2 cameos so far. Nathan Fillion did a guest spot with Kevin Smith as Nathan Fillion. But like in the course of the episode, Nathan Fillion's like, "Oh man, I gotta tell you, like you're the only person in the world that would believe me, but I'm not Nathan Fillion." And Rainn Wilson's like, "What?" He goes, "No, I'm an alien. I took over Nathan Fillion's body like 11 years ago, and no one knows. It's awesome." So it's fantastic. There's a lot of great little gags and jokes, and I think the Jeet is the sidekick, and he's phenomenal. If you're interested in listening to something without needing to like have a full visual kind of attachment to it, I would definitely say that this is something to check out. It's fun if you want to like listen to while you're working out or cleaning or what have you. It's the perfect kind of story because you don't need to be glued to a television screen, and it's mostly what's what I'm looking for. It's mostly a throwback to like classic radio dramas, but they're in I wouldn't say digestible bites because each episode's anywhere from 35 to 45, 50 minutes. So like they are quite hefty, but if you can take it with you and start and stop it as you need, like it's perfect. So that's about it for me this week, though.
Yeah, you said Nathan Fillion, and I actually watched something with him in it this week. Or I watched it again actually. Do you remember how I was telling you about MODOK and how I was kind of not feeling it at the first?
Mm-hmm.
You know? As I watched more and more of it, I started to get into it, but it was for all the characters other than Patton Oswalt, and especially his, because he's kind of like, he plays a character called Wonder Man, and he's basically like if you took Superman, but you gave him like the worst ego of all time, Dude's so fucking full of himself, he literally stops every 10 seconds to take pictures and shit. And what's her name? You've talked about her before. She plays MODOK's wife in the show. I want to say it's Amy Garcia. I want to say her name is.
Sounds about right.
And yeah, she's like this she's this YouTuber or whatever, like that's like selling products or whatever because MODOK's not making money on his own, so that's the only way they have any income. And she's trying to become popular, so she starts dating Wonder Man, and he's being full of himself, and you think, oh man, this guy's a dick. Turns out he really does like her. She was using him to become popular or whatever, and then he says the best thing ever. He's like, you know what? I don't need you. I got a bunch of people waiting for me to save them anyways, and they're going to be more grateful. He just takes off. Like, Nathan Fillion. Oh man, good. I wish he was in more episodes. He's only in like 2. It's a shame.
All right,
dude's always solid no matter where he goes.
Well, got anything else?
No, not at the moment. No, man.
All right, well, follow us on Twitter then at NerdCorp, NERDCORP, and on realnerdcorp.com, REALNERDCORP.com. Be sure to tune in for new episodes. Matt, what are your personals?
You can find me on Twitch at MNerdCorp, same handle on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at ChadNerdCorp, ChadNerdCorp, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut. For Matt, I'm Chad. This has been another edition of the NerdCorp Podcast. We'll see you guys next week. Matt, say good night.
Good night, everyone. See you next week.